Have you ever thought to yourself that maybe you're living much more limited than you could be? That maybe you're living in a box that is imaginary and that what you're capable of is far more than you could even imagine? Today, we're going to talk about this, and we're going to talk about the imaginary limits that we set on ourselves and how we can transcend them. This conversation was inspired by an extraordinary man I met last week, whose name is Barnaby. And Barnaby was raised in northern Alaska, where there's no electricity and there was almost no one around where he was raised, just him and his two parents. He never had an education, not even homeschooling. He grew up just living freely in the woods, playing with nature. And when he reached the age of 15 or 16, the thought of getting an education came up to his mind, and he had a conversation with his parents about it. Mind you, doesn't have grades. He's never taken any tests, nothing. And he decides that he wants to go to college. And so he applies to colleges and he gets into one of those schools, Harvard. And
Without any schooling.
no transcript, no schooling, no transcript, none of that. And then he gets to Harvard, and at Harvard, he can't take any of the written exams because he didn't have the skills to be able to do that. So he got each of his professors to agree to give him oral exams, to take all of his tests orally. And he did exceptionally well at Harvard. And then he eventually went to Oxford University, where he became a Rhodes Scholar, which is one of the most prestigious scholarships that you can get. And then he went on in his career and he went on to continue to break all sorts of conventions and do extraordinary things in his life. Today, he's working with billionaires to help them reallocate their money that they've agreed they don't want to hold on to until they die to positive causes, to causes that are helping humanity. And listening to Barnaby's story was really, really inspiring to me. And it made me think about, where am I seeing limits in my life where they don't actually exist? So, Mitra, let's bring this down. I know Barnaby is a very extraordinary situation. We don't all have the privilege of having an unprogrammed mind, not being conditioned by society, and being able to have the opportunities that he did. However, there's so much we can still learn from him. So, Mitra, what are the common limits that you see people have in their daily lives and in their broader lives as well?
I think the most common ones that are the ones that start with I can't. I can't do this. I can't go there. I cannot achieve that. I just can't. That's not something I can do. So it depends on where they're in life. But as soon as I hear I can't, about 80% of the time, they're limitations that are self-imposed. There are 20% that it's true. I tell you, like, I can't fly. That might be true right now. I mean, eventually we can, but right now I can't. So anything that starts with I can needs examination.
When I hear you say about I can't, I think about imposter syndrome. And, how many times in my life where there are things I wanted to do and I felt I was capable of doing it, but I didn't because I felt like I didn't have the experience, or I didn't have the contacts, or the education. And I also think about how long it took me to pay piano, for example. In my mind, I kept telling myself, oh, it's hard. I need a teacher. It's a big commitment. Until one time I finally said, you know what, I'm just going to give it a try. And I was able to see that all those limits were BS. But what else, Mitra? Let's go into some of the more common things that people are setting limits on themselves with.
That they think the life that has been formulated for them is the life that they have to live. Those dictations, and it is dictation, and you need a dictator to dictate to you. The dictation comes from society, institutions, families, friends, communities. It could be ancestral. I have seen that too. That's just very fascinating when that I come across that I see there is a pattern of multi-generational patterns that are limiting people, and somehow they say we, and I say who's we, and they say like just my family, and they give me good examples. I mean, very convincing, these
Like what?
statements.
What's an example of
Like
one?
they say, my mother this, my grandmother that, or my father, all my brothers, all my uncles, like all men in my life,
All the men in my life have
all my
been
my
doctors and
grandfather.
engineers, and
Yes.
yeah.
Yeah, my grandfather and my great grandfather. And as soon as these names, family members' names, especially multi generational family names, come up, I realize this is something that it's been really instilled in them through generations, and they have bought into it. And that's something that is very prevalent. The other way we limit ourselves is the opposite. It's a covered up version of that. Fashion is one of them. Believe
Mm,
it or not, it's like I have to look certain way in order to do certain things. I
mm,
just don't have the look for it. And I'm
yeah.
thinking, well, like what look? I mean, it's like saying mathematicians should look like this and musicians should look like that. And I mean, even models. I mean, which is all about look. We now see that there are models of all kinds of shapes and forms and backgrounds. So it's these limitations, be it physical, be it mental, be it emotional and energetic, is fascinating to see. So I go back to my first statement. When you hear I can't, please, as Nietzsche says, do the hammer test. Tap on it and see if it's hollow or if it has substance, because there's a good chance, I would give it 80% chance that it is hollow. But because you have given it power and because you have repeated it for so long, you actually believe it. Or happiness. We can go there. What happiness looks like. If you ask people why you want to do this and why do you want to achieve that and why are you putting so much pressure on yourself to go to this particular school? Is it your passion? No, it's a pressure. So it's a different P. Passion or pressure. That I have to go to this because that's the, dictation that we have received. That
Yeah,
to
because I
me,
have to go because that's what's going to
yeah,
lead me to success, and success is
exactly.
happiness, financial
Ex-
success.
exactly.
And even that, being happy requires financial success. That's one that ruled me for a long time.
Tell me more.
I thought it did, and it came from you know a place, a genuine misperception in my life, and my parents struggled financially a lot, and they fought a lot about finances, and as a kid, I concluded that not having money equals pain, and therefore having money must equal freedom and happiness. And that drove me all the way up until I was 36 when I had the big exit from the company. And I got the financial prosperity I was seeking. And we all know this. I've shared this story many times. It did not at all relieve me of the pain that I was holding. Yeah.
Yeah. My book is finished and is coming out. The Attentionist is coming out in March of 2026. There's a character in it. His name is Successo. He's a physical, material kind of. These are interesting
His
names,
name,
actually.
I think, is telling, I imagine.
Yes, he's was a survivalist in the material world, and then hence an attentionist, meaning a person that knows they have a choice. But there's a place in the book. I just remember that it says that I was a poor boy suffering with no money, and then I became an adult man suffering with lots of money. or some
Mm.
words to that effect.
Yeah.
So what we don't understand is that whatever we want and whatever we do is because we're seeking a state of being.
Yeah.
And when we sacrifice, and I use that word very intentionally, when we sacrifice that state of being for getting things and having things on the way of becoming that thing and experiencing that, then we have gone on the wrong road. They say that if you sacrifice your sleep for a beautiful bedroom that is very impressive, that's not a success.
Yeah.
That's not a success, because the whole idea of the beautiful bedroom was for me to sleep well. But I've sacrificed my quality of my sleep and the beauty and depth of my sleep. But hey, I have a bedroom that I can put in magazines. I can impress anybody that comes and visits my home. But I paid the price that it's not really wise.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think it's really powerful to understand where these conditionings come from. They're not bad in and of themselves. If we look at them and we honestly understand where do they come from. And in my situation, part of it was what I shared, right? When I have that understanding, it gives me a little bit more power over it, over the decision. It's no longer, um, something that I felt was just hardwired in me, but I made a decision at some point in my life, and the decision was made based on a misunderstanding. And knowing that is is empowering.
Yes.
So what are ways in some of the examples that you've given me, about these limits, these imaginary limits that people have set, what are ways that they can become aware of, where these limits actually came from?
Yeah.
We're telling them, but sometimes it's hard to just be able to relate where it came from.
Yeah.
So how can they identify what the source of these limits are?
I think let's pose the first question.
Yeah.
I want to ask our interview friends, uh, where are you putting limitations on yourself? That's very beautiful to find out. And you can start small. Where are you saying I can't? Where are you thinking that I don't know, that's truly beyond me? So find where is it really what it is. And once you find the what, and then we can explore where did it come from. And where did it come from? It's only important for shedding a bit of light, because we don't want to get too involved in the source of it. Just know that there are many forces, there are many structures in the society built and designed to make sure that you stay within the norm. And the best place to understand, and we came up with a lot of F's. So please know that familiar does not mean safe or good or helpful. Familiar just means familiar. We sometimes confuse familiar with healthy and good and useful and all those words that are, that allow us to continue. Familiar just means something I have practiced. Who? Is it me? No, maybe my whole family practiced it. Maybe the whole society practices it. Maybe my little, friendship group, they're practicing it. So really questioning that and seeing that what is it that I'm putting on myself that it's limiting? Where is that pattern dominant in my life? Just for this, as you said, for the recognition and for shedding some light to see, where am I stuck? I think that's very important. And what is also helpful is to find people who have broken norms, especially in that particular area, because they're so easy. I mean, now information is everywhere online. So I can just look for somebody that, got successful in this area and came from this background. Find people, because we really, as human beings, we need role models. We need a point of reference. If it's not me, it has to be someone that is another human being that I can say, okay, Ben has done that too. So if Ben can do it, I probably can too. And, and then if you do try, if you really go there and find it and start and remember that there's a way and try and you fail, how do you consider failure? Is failure, it's a very strong word we use for failure. Can you let failure be your teacher? Can failure bring information for you as opposed to bring you to a stop and say, that's it. I tried. Ben can do it, but I can't, and let it go. So these are few things that I think they're very, very important outwardly. And inwardly, I think it's important that you consent, provide your consent to living a life that it's not predictable. So
Yeah.
start saying things like, I don't know, and I'm excited to find out. Because usually we say, I don't know, and a fear statement comes after that. I don't know. Lord, I don't know what's going to happen. It's like there's a lot of fear that comes with that statement. And fear and excitement are actually siblings. One lives in love, one lives in fear, but they're siblings. They're the same energy. So allow, invite, consent to openness, unpredictability, see it as exciting things and say, I don't know, I've done my best, but I'm really excited to see what happens. Those are few things that might be helpful for our interview listeners to really try to go beyond their own self-imposed limits.
Yeah, these are really powerful things. These are things that has helped me a lot in my life. And
Do
so
tell.
let's unpack some of
Okay.
these. You mentioned about familiarity, and I think about one thing that was very familiar with me because I was just conditioned is that success requires hard work. You have to work hard. You got to struggle in order to become successful. That's just all I ever saw. I saw that in my parents. I saw that in, a lot of the people that I was around. My culture seemed to believe that. So it was very familiar and it seemed to me as an absolute truth. And there's something really powerful is it's a question to ask is, do I believe that because it's familiar, or do I believe that because it's actually true? Can I find examples going back to your, the second thing that you mentioned, which is finding examples of where other people have lived according to a totally different set of principles that actually success can be easy,
Right.
right? But then, it's really powerful recognizing that, wait, this is familiarity. This is not an absolute truth. So let us just acknowledge I haven't broken it. I haven't broken my conditioning. I can't help but to feel that way. But at least I can see that this is a conditioning that I received.
Yes. Yes.
And that gives me a little bit more agency to know that, okay, I can choose this differently because it's not an absolute truth.
Yes. And what is also very helpful is to ask yourself, where else did I break that pattern of thinking that I can't do? Where was it? So I ask people, um, they say, but I can't do it, Mitra. I said, well, have you done it anywhere else? And that's a very long pause usually between this question and that one. They eventually, it's very interesting. Mind loves to find problems, but when you give it a task to find some good news, it's like, it takes a long time. So, and they look where to say, yeah. I say, where? They say, yeah, when I was doing this and then I thought that and I did that. I said, so it's possible. You have a history. You, not just hearing it, from somebody else. It's very important, no matter how small it is. How small it is. I learned to swim. I went over like, my time limitations. Like I changed my relationship with, a person that I thought there was no way I could see them in a different way. Something not too big. Find a success story in your own history and see, how that changes your relationship with your current self-imposing limitations.
That's a good one too, Mitra. You know, um, there are times when I felt like I was limited in some way, that I couldn't transcend something. And I forgot all of the examples in my own life where I transcended limits, where other people saw limits, and even
Yes.
myself temporarily, but I was able to to transcend them. I remember when I was in finance, I was in investment management, I was in the business development department, and it was my dream for reasons that are based on other limits to go into portfolio management because I felt that portfolio management, that was the most prestigious. That was the highest position or highest department you can be at the company. That's where you're touching the money, where you're working with the big guys in the firm, and I was told that that's not possible. Going from business development to portfolio management is not possible. Portfolio management, they only recruit guys from Harvard, Wharton, all the Ivy League schools, and I went to UC Irvine. Not to mention that I had no connection to portfolio management, but I managed to get into portfolio management, and it happened quite synchronistically. I did work my butt off, and I was intentional, but a series of synchronicities led to the opportunity for me to get the role, and it happened so gracefully and so easily. There was a time in my life where I forgot this. I forgot that was a really powerful example in my life where I transcended conventional norms and limits. I surprise myself often at how many examples I can find, and even my friends themselves, how many they can find in their own lives that they're just not seeing at a given time.
Yeah. So the questions come to my mind as I listen to you. First of all, questioning that is this limitation. First of all, what is the limitation? Is this limitation mine even, or is it borrowed? I call it borrowed limitation. You have told me I can't do it, and I have believed it, so I think I can't. Is it mine? People always say, people say, they say, and I say, like, who are they? Nobody can name them. It's a very vague they. They have said, they have predicted, they have told me this. And then the question is it true? Is it true? Is this a true limitation? There might be some limitations, even though every day, even at physical level, we hear more and more those imaginary limitations being like completely proven the other way. But let's just question that the process of questioning is very helpful because it allows things to unfold and let the truth come out. And let's see if, most of the things that we believe are not possible or are not for us possible, might just dissolve and resolve on their own when we just start questioning it.
Asking the right questions is deceptively powerful,
Yes.
you know,
Yeah.
because the mind is excellent at actually finding answers when we ask the right questions, and it will find the answers, and
Yeah.
it will find the evidence.
Yes.
So the role models one that you mentioned, that's really helpful too. It's like the guy who breaks the world record in Olympics, who you know then the years that follow, many other athletes end up breaking that same record. It's really powerful to actually take initiative to find people. Ask yourself the question, who are people that I know in my life, or even people figures, public figures, who are uh, unconventional and have broken these limits that I've perceived in myself, and listening to their biography or watching a film on them. I was really inspired by Nelson Mandela, really inspired by him. And talk about a man who transcended limits, right? And
Yes.
watching his film is so inspiring. And when I watch that film and when I listen to a biography on him, and I go and find other people who are doing similar things, it has an impact on my mind. It starts to weaken and dismantle that rigidity that I had about these limits that I thought I had, or these rules that I thought. So the more evidence I find, outside, the easier it is for me to recognize that I can transcend this.
Yes, it is possible. It is
Yeah.
possible. So I really recommend going out and finding those examples and then come home and, as we mentioned, find where did you personally break those limits, and then ask yourself, how can I apply whatever it was that I found out, the limits that I broke, how can I apply that to the current limitation that I have? Because sometimes it's helpful to have a role model outside of yourself. Sometimes it's helpful to have a self reference and say, hey, I can do it. I did it in this area. So I call it copy and paste it in this area of my life. So whatever works for you, the main thing is to question it and to know that most of the time, and again, I emphasize because I know whenever we say these things, we receive feedback that what about this and how about that? You did not include this. No, there are times that from what we know from human conditions, that so far it's been impossible, but they are far and few and they don't apply to everyday limitations that are mainly self-imposed upon ourselves because we live in the land of fear, and hence the inherited, learned, practiced, or invented limitations that we find and apply to ourselves and our lives.
Yeah, and speaking to that, I think um, recognizing the benefits, which you mentioned, of what if I actually do this thing and the worst case scenario plays out, right? This is a scenario that my mind is playing out. The scenario of failure actually plays out. Our mind has already played out all the reasons why it's bad, right? So we got that covered. But
Yes.
what about all the benefits that can
Yes.
come of
I
that?
like that.
And you touched on this, and I think this is also really, really powerful. It helps the mind just see things from another lens, right? If I pursue that opportunity, that if I apply for that job that I feel like I'm not qualified for, and but I really want it, and I don't get it, I fail in that way. What would be the benefits uh, of that, right? And really contemplating that. And sometimes we struggle with this, right? And this is where the beauty of AI, and the power of AI, we can use it to help us in these processes, because I do it all the time. I ask it to help me see things from a different perspective, help me see the benefits where I'm not seeing them.
Yes.
What's really important, I just want to add this disclaimer, is you gotta tell, if you're interacting with AI, you gotta tell it who it is. If you don't preface it, for example, a Socratic reasoning coach, right? Or imagine you're Tony Robbins. You could say that, someone that you admire the way that they think. Help me see the benefits of this situation, or the benefits of me failing in this scenario. And
Mhm.
it could be really powerful. But to ask it cold, which is to just ask the question, what are the benefits uh, uh, of of this happening, if I fail? It can work, but it's far more powerful when we can tell it who it is.
I actually ask AI to ask me questions. So
I
I
love that.
say that's actually very
Yeah,
helpful
I
because
do that too.
I usually don't trust people. I mean, I don't know what Tony Robbins knows, but I know what I don't know. So I say, I believe that I cannot do this, right? Now, ask me questions that obviously I haven't asked myself and I've arrived at this
I love that. It's
conclusion.
so powerful. It's
Yeah.
so powerful.
Yes.
Yes, I
And
tell
then
it.
it asks me questions that I think, oh, wow, I now have to tell the truth. And I say, well, and it's very interesting what happens when you do
Yeah,
that. And it comes up with questions that I probably could have come up with, but I couldn't formulate it that way. And honestly, talking about familiar, I don't want to rattle my familiar. I've concluded that I don't want to do that and I put it aside. And it did ask me a question and it just becomes so vivid that I can't deny it.
I recently started doing that. I tell it that I want to have an interactive dialogue with it. Because if I don't say that, it's going to just go on. It's going to give me long responses, and I don't want long responses. I just want to have an interactive dialogue. I want it to help me see it in a different way. And wow, it could be so potent. It could be so potent.
Yes, it asks the
Yeah.
right questions that I have avoided because, as you said, and as we keep saying in many episodes, the power of asking the right questions. And you've probably heard me say this, and you probably hear it again. My greatest teacher always said, Mitra, there is never shortage of good answers. The problem is most people are, most of the time, are asking the wrong question. So figure out what your question is, and then you will see that the answer comes to you very effortlessly. Don't, if it's not because you're not asking the question, by right, I don't mean right and wrong. I mean a question that adds to your consciousness, that it's good for your growth. It's not a question that keeps you more in your fearful land, but a question that allows you to come to choice and to go to freedom.
Yeah. And to go to that, what you called, Mitra, to work our way towards that unmapped mind, the
Yes,
unprogrammed mind,
yes,
the beginner's mind,
yes,
where there are no limits. There's only possibility. And when there's only possibility, there's infinite creativity.
yes. And it's really powerful. I remember I just funny how memories come to me. I had a teacher many years ago when I was very young, a teacher of consciousness that would come. We were with them for a week, and they would come and they lecture with such oomph and power and convince us all and said, go and contemplate on this. It was a silent retreat. And then next day we would come and we would be full of excitement and questions that had bought into that philosophy. And they would say exactly the opposite. And we couldn't even talk because it was silent retreat. It was like I was jumping up and down thinking, but that's not what you said yesterday. And then at the end, they said that, I know you are all frustrated. I know you think that I am inconsistent. I know you bought into the first thing I said, and the second day bought into the second thing I said, and the third day. The fact is, I did it intentionally so that you are never ever attached to one way, because ways change as we proceed on our path.
Beautiful. And we will end with that, Mitra. Thank you so much. We wish you all well, dear friends, and may you live a life that is unbounded, unconventional, and realize your fullest potential. Until next time, Mitra.
Thank you so much for tuning in today. For a list of the links and other resources referenced in this episode, check out the podcast description.
If you're benefiting from our podcast, we'd love if you could help us reach more people by subscribing. Your support means the world to us. From our hearts to yours, we thank you.